Welcome to Confessions by Banana Ketchup. I'm fairly sure I've only ever lived in haunted houses. My mother and father have both had paranormal experiences in the past. My mother is more open about some of the things she saw compared to my father. My dad says most of his odd stories are from the time in the military, mostly the times he was deployed and the times he was stationed overseas, and that he isn't sure if it was his mind making up something to occupy those new scary places he was visiting, or if they were real things that happened to him. Either way, I think neither of them have picked up on how to read a bad space, even after all their experiences, because the past few houses we have lived in have been creepy and overflowing with negative energy. House 1. When we lived in New England, we lived on a military base. A lot of creepy things would happen to us. I briefly mentioned it in a post I made a while ago about a different story, but I'll go into more details in this post. We would hear footsteps a lot, like a lot. It always sounded like somebody was stomping around the second floor landing between the bedrooms. We'd hear it in the day while we were all sitting together in the living room. We'd hear it at night while everyone was in bed. I even heard it while I was home alone a few times. We had this odd closet upstairs. It gave me, my brother, and our dog the creeps. The closet was right next to my brother's bedroom door, so he refused to leave his room at night because he didn't want to walk near it. My dog would always stay as far from it as possible. His fur would stand up on end, and he just stared at it. It always unnerved me, and I refused to go upstairs without my dad escorting me. I always asked my dad to shut the closet door so I didn't have to look at it while going to the bathroom in the middle of the night. It was straight across from the bathroom door and was super creepy to look into at night. I often had nightmares and just odd feelings during the day that people were staring through my bedroom window at me. My bedroom was on the second floor. Granted, there was a little roofed shed attached to the side of the house that jutted out under my window, but it was still high enough that nobody could really climb onto it without making a bunch of noise. I always kept my blinds closed if I were going to sit alone in my room. I'd always leave the door open so I could hear my family through the rest of the house. I had sleep paralysis twice from what I remember. My oldest brother came to visit for Christmas one year with his now ex-wife and her daughter. The kid hated being upstairs and always talked about the man by the door and how he scared her. Little to say, my brother and I hated being near that closet even more from then on. House 2. Eventually, we moved into a small retirement town in the south. There wasn't anything wrong with the house per se, but the town itself just felt really heavy. Most of the population were elderly people and drug addicts. So there was a feeling of strife and death everywhere you went. It made being there uneasy, and every bump in the night scared me. House 3. We moved again last summer and finally settled down in my dad's hometown. I love the area. It's a really small town in the Midwest. There's lots of farmers around here, and everyone seems to the kind of people I like being around. They've got a sort of old-school hard-working nature about them. For the most part, everyone tends to leave each other alone. Even in such a small and rural town like this, there's a lot of support for minorities. A lot of houses have Black Lives Matter posters and flags outside the house, as well as LGBT flags and Be Kind signs. The high school has a GSA club, essentially a support group in club form. Mostly LGBT students attend, but all students are welcomed, which is super excited as I myself am queer. It's really a beautiful little town. But there's definitely something wrong with our house. There's a cemetery in our neighborhood, for starters. The family that originally owned the land built a family cemetery, but as time went on, their kids grew up and sold their shares of the land, and so on. Developers got a hold of it and started building neighborhoods. Keeping respect for the sanctity of the gravesite, they left it untouched and just built around it. We can see the cemetery from our back door. I could walk to it and back to my house in 3 minutes max. We have a fairly large utility room in the basement, and it always creeps me out. I often get skittish when I'm alone, and I also get creeped out by dark rooms. So, as I've grown up, I picked up a tendency to just feel the fear, get over it, and move on. But that room down there is different. Whenever I go down there alone, I bring a butter knife or a pair of scissors, and I turn on every light on the way. It scares me that badly. My mother has already heard footsteps walking around the house when she was home alone one night. I went to take an exam this morning, and on my way out, I went to do my good luck ritual. I've managed to convince myself that knocking on a door frame, specifically the one to my bedroom, before I go to any big event gives me extra good luck. I felt a little cold as I got near my bedroom door, but seeing as my room is situated near the front of the house and the front door was open from my parents going out to the car, I figured the cold air outside was just getting into the house. I reached my hand up, and without a second thought, nor a break in my stride, I knocked on my doorframe. The hair on my neck immediately stood up as I heard a reply. 2 swift knocks on the wall! My fight instinct kicked in immediately, and I spun around. Those 2 knocks were loud and clear as day. They sounded so real that I was almost certain there would be a person there, but there was nothing, just my bedroom and the end of the hall. My light was on, and I could clearly see that there wasn't anybody in my room. Both my parents were outside. All of my siblings are out of the house now. There is no way it was an echo. It wasn't my hand possibly bouncing back and hitting the wall again. I would have felt that. Edit. It wasn't any pet either. Unfortunately, my dog passed away before we moved here. I do still feel his energy in the room his ashes are in though, and if I go in there during rainstorms, I get really panicky, which I think is his spirit of energy, as he always hated thunderstorms, fireworks, and any other loud noises. I shrugged it off and left the house. I thought maybe somebody knocked on the front door and I just misheard it. It was too early for it to possibly be a mailman, so the only other person could have been is either of my parents. Maybe they knocked to get my attention as the way to say hurry up, but when I got to the car and asked if one of them knocked, they both denied it. My parents aren't the kind of people who would do something like that anyway. They'd more likely just call for me instead of knocking to get my attention, and they're definitely not the kind of people who would do it and then say they didn't. It creeped me out, but I also find it a little endearing that the ghost knocked me good luck. That's all that has happened here so far. We've only been living in this house for about 6 or 7 months, so we are still in the process of settling in. If anything else crazy happens, I'll talk about it. I just wanted to share some of the weird stories I have. Thank you, TheMidwestDyke, the author. An incident I never forgot. This is the first time writing about an incident that happened when I was 8 years old. Please don't mind my punctuation, I'm not an English literature major. When I was 8 years old, my mother and I had to house sit at a relative's house in the country. I don't know why we had to house sit, I was too young to really care. Anyway, fast forward till that first night in this house. I remember nothing about the day, but when I went to sleep, then woke up suddenly, I remember everything as if it was yesterday. It started with me waking up suddenly at 2:48 AM, and as I looked to the end of the bed, I see a small black shadowy figure about 3 foot tall. It looked like a mass, not human shape, no eyes, no arms, no head, just a dark mass is the best I can describe it. I was not afraid whatsoever. I got out of bed, I got on all fours, and just stared at this thing for a bit. Now, this is where things get weird. This shadow figure and I walked all through the house. I felt as though it was trying to show me something, but never figured out what. I followed it into the bedroom closet, then followed it downstairs into the kitchen. I opened up all the ground lever cupboards for it, too short to reach the top, and after some time it led me back to bed I was sleeping in, and I went back to bed thinking about what just happened. Now, I don't remember anything about the next day or anything else about that house. Fast forward till 2 weeks ago, I really started thinking about this incident again after reading stories on here. I thought about this incident a few times a year since it happened, but really started thinking about it a few weeks ago. So the other day I asked my mother if she remembered taking me to house sit in the country for a night where I was 8. She was shocked and had no idea how I remembered doing that, and then proceeded to tell me how she had a bad experience that night, because when she woke up all the cupboards in the kitchen were open up and it was just her and I there. I then told her about what I did that night and she was just stunned and didn't really know what to say to me. I really need closure to what I experienced that night, so if anyone has any explanation as to what was happening, I would love to hear it. Closest thing would be sleep paralysis. The only thing is, I know what I saw and I was conscious of it. What bothers me is, what was the thing doing with me, and why it gave me a tour of the house basically, and why is this memory so vivid in my mind, and why was I not afraid of all? I would be petrified if I woke up to something at the foot of my bed now. Thanks for taking the time and reading my experience. Cheers, Chad. Thank you, Dicks Forever, the author. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you already haven't, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any new episodes. See you again soon, and until then, please, be safe.